I thought I was building a life on a foundation of solid granite, but it turns out I was just standing on a trapdoor, waiting for the woman I loved to pull the lever. My name is Mark. I'm a journeyman lineman. For those who don't know what that entails, I spend my days climbing poles and handling high-voltage power lines. In my line of work, if you don't follow the code, observe, assess, act, you don't just lose your job, you lose your life. You have to be methodical. You have to look for the frayed wire before you touch the transformer. I've spent 10 years training my brain to spot anomalies, to sense when something is off before the sparks start flying. I applied that same discipline to my relationship with Nadia. Or at least I thought I did. Nadia was incredible. Or so I told myself for 3 years. She was vibrant, funny, and seemed to appreciate the stability I provided. Being a lineman pays well, really well, if you're willing to put in the overtime and the hazardous hours. I took pride in being the provider. We had a house, a dog, and a wedding date set for 6 months from now. I had already put down massive deposits on a venue that looked like something out of a fairy tale. But then came Lexi. Lexi was a new hire at Nadia's marketing firm, and she arrived in Nadia's life like a Category 5 hurricane of toxic energy. Within 2 weeks of them becoming work besties, the frequency of my house started to change. The observe phase of my training kicked in automatically. It started with the phone. For 3 years, Nadia's phone was just a tool. Suddenly, it became a limb she had to protect at all costs. It was always face down. Always. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd jump like I'd just dropped a live wire at her feet. "You're being twitchy, babe," I said one night, trying to keep it light. "Everything okay at work?" She didn't even look up, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Just Lexi. She's going through drama. You wouldn't understand, Mark. You're so linear. Not everything is a math problem." That was the first time she used that tone with me. Dismissive. Cold. Like my stability was suddenly a character flaw. I felt a pang of unease in my chest, a literal tightening of the ribs, but I brushed it off. I told myself it was just wedding stress. Then I found the hotel keycard. It was tucked under a pile of mail on the entryway table. A sleek, gold-embossed card from the Grand View Resort and Spa, a place 3 hours away that costs more per night than I make in a double shift. When I asked her about it, she didn't even blink. "Oh, Lexi found that in the parking lot," she said, tossing it into the trash with a practiced nonchalance that made my blood run cold. "She thought it was mine and gave it to me. I forgot to throw it away." A lie. I knew it was a lie because I saw the way her pulse jumped in her neck. My internal alarm was screaming, "Danger," but I didn't have the proof yet. I was observing. I was assessing. But I had no idea that while I was planning our future, Nadia was already spending the money I'd earned to fund her escape from it. In my line of work, you don't ignore a buzzing transformer. You don't hope the sparking wire settles down. You investigate. So, after the hotel keycard incident, I did something I'd never done in 3 years. I sat down and audited our joint wedding account. We had a system. I put in 70% of my paycheck, she put in what she could from her marketing gig, and that money was strictly for the venue, the catering, and the life we were building. It was supposed to be our safety net. When I logged into the portal that night, my stomach didn't just drop, it turned into lead. Over the last 47 days, there were dozens of cash withdrawals. $200 here, $500 there, sometimes twice a day. The total? $11,000. Gone. Vanished into thin air. No receipts, no Venmo tags, just cold, hard cash pulled from ATMs all over the city, mostly near high-end shopping districts and trendy bars. I felt like I'd been hit by a live wire. I was shaking, staring at the screen in the dark of our kitchen while Nadia slept soundly upstairs. $11,000 is a lot of overtime. That's months of climbing poles in the rain and wind. The next morning, I confronted her. I kept my voice level, professional, just like I'm taught to handle a crisis on the job. "Nadia, I was looking at the wedding account. There's $11,000 missing. Can you tell me what's going on?" She didn't even stop pouring her coffee. She just sighed, a long dramatic sound that made me feel like I was the one being difficult. Oh my God, Mark. Are we really doing this? It's wedding stuff. Tips for vendors, deposits that needed cash. Lexi said some of these high-end places prefer it under the table to save us on tax. I was trying to be smart with our money. Lexi said. I repeated, my voice hardening. Lexi isn't on this account. Nadia. And since when does a 5-star florist take $2,000 in cash from an ATM at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday? She slammed her mug down. Why are you being so controlling? Seriously. It's like you're interrogating me. I'm doing all the planning while you're out playing with wires, and now you're acting like I'm a criminal. It's exhausting. There it was. That word. Controlling. It hit me like a physical blow. I've never told her what to wear, who to see, or how to spend her own money. But the moment I asked about the disappearance of a small fortune I'd earned, I was the villain. It felt rehearsed. It felt like she'd been coached to use that specific word to shut me down. I'm not being controlling, Nadia. I'm being observant. This is our future, I said, trying to stay calm. Whatever, Mark. If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't even be doing this, she snapped, grabbing her bag and storming out to her car. She left me standing there in a silent house, the observe phase of my training officially ending. It was time to assess. I didn't realize it yet, but the $11,000 was just the entry fee for the nightmare she was about to put me through. After the controlling blow-up, a heavy, toxic silence settled over our house. It was like the air before a massive lightning strike, thick, ionized, and charging up for something ugly. I spent my shifts at work high up in the bucket, staring at the horizon, trying to reconcile the woman I proposed to with the person who just gaslit me over $11,000. Then came the sudden trip. I came home on a Tuesday evening, bone-tired from stringing wire in a crosswind, to find Nadia packing a suitcase. Not just a weekend bag, the big, hard-shell rolling suitcase we usually took on international flights. Going somewhere? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. My heart was already hammering against my ribs. Oh, you're home early, she said, not looking up. She was folding a silk dress I'd never seen before. Yeah, Lexi's friend. You remember Sarah, right? She's having a last-minute bachelorette party. It's a celebrate the chaos kind of thing. We're heading out tonight. I searched my brain. Sarah. Who's Sarah? You've never mentioned a Sarah. Nadia rolled her eyes, that familiar flash of irritation crossing her face. God, Mark, this is what I mean. I talk about my life, and you just tune out. She's Lexi's college roommate. It's a girls' trip. No boys, no stress, just freedom. I really need this after the way you've been hovering lately. Where are you going? Do you have a hotel name? An address? She paused, a pair of expensive-looking heels in her hands. Somewhere in the mountains. I don't even know the name of the cabin. Lexi booked everything. I'll send you a pin when we get there. If I have service. If I have service. The oldest line in the book. Nadia, we have our formal engagement dinner in 3 days, I reminded her, my voice dropping an octave. Your dad is flying in. My whole family is coming. It's at that steakhouse you insisted on. You're going to be back, right? Of course I'll be back, Mark. Stop being so paranoid, she snapped, zipping the suitcase with a sharp rip that sounded like fabric tearing. It's just a few days. I'll be home Friday morning, refreshed and ready for the dinner. Just give me some space to breathe, okay? She didn't kiss me goodbye. She barely looked at me. As I watched her taillights disappear down the driveway, I felt a cold realization sink into my gut. My observe phase had spotted a dozen frayed wires. The $11,000, the secret clothes, the friend I'd never heard of, the controlling defense. I didn't go to sleep. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened a new folder on my laptop. I labeled it Documentation. In my job, if you find a fault in the line, you don't just stare at it. You log it, you map it, and you prepare to cut the power. I started by printing out the bank statements. Then, I did something I'm not proud of, but was absolutely necessary. I logged into our shared iPad and checked the Find My device settings. Nadia thought she was being slick. But she forgot that her new iPad was still synced to my Apple ID for the family sharing plan. As I watched the little green dot move on the map, it wasn't headed toward the mountains. It was heading straight toward the coast. Straight toward the Grand View Resort and Spa. The assess phase was over. Now, I just had to wait for the right moment to act. Friday morning came and went. No Nadia. No refreshed fiancé walking through the door with stories of a mountain cabin. My phone stayed silent, sitting on the kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I didn't reach out. I didn't text her, "Where are you?" or "Are you okay?" In my line of work, if you know a line is live, you don't touch it to check. You wait for the meter to tell you the truth. By 6 p.m., I was standing in front of the mirror, tightening my tie. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I felt a strange, cold clarity, the kind you get when you're working a double shift in a blizzard and your survival instinct overrides your exhaustion. I drove to the steakhouse alone. The private room was already half full when I arrived. My parents were there, my brother Danny, who's always been my second set of eyes, and most importantly, Ray. Ray is Nadia's father. He's a retired union guy, a man who worked 40 years in a factory and believes a man's word is his bond. He shook my hand, his grip firm, but his eyes were scanning the room. "Where's my girl, Mark?" Ray asked, pulling out his chair. "Traffic bad." "She said she was on her way, Ray," I lied. It was a tactical lie. I needed everyone in their seats. I needed the audience present for the act. By 7:30 p.m., the appetizers were cold. 13 people were sitting around a long mahogany table, the clinking of silverware replaced by an awkward, heavy silence. Every time the door opened, 13 heads turned. Every time, it was just a waiter with another bottle of wine I knew I'd be paying for. "I'll text her," Ray said, his brow furrowed. He pulled out his phone, his thumbs moving slowly. "She's usually so punctual for these things. Especially when you're footing the bill for this fancy spread." I sat at the head of the table, sipping water, watching the documentation folder in my mind. I knew exactly where she was. My iPad showed the green wasn't moving. It was stationary at the Grand View Resort. Suddenly, Ray's phone buzzed. He looked at it and let out a relieved sigh. "See, I told you." "She just messaged me," Ray announced to the table, his voice booming with forced cheer. "She says she's stuck in a massive pileup on the interstate. She's 5 minutes away. Just parked the car and is walking up from the valet now." The table relaxed. My mother smiled. My sisters started talking about the centerpieces. But I looked at Danny. Danny wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his phone, his face turning a ghostly shade of gray. He looked up, caught my eye, and leaned over, sliding his phone across the white tablecloth toward me. "Mark," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You need to see Lexi's Instagram story. Right now." I looked down. It wasn't a car crash. It wasn't a valet stand. It was a video, shot in high-definition slow motion, overlooking a sparkling infinity pool at the Grand View. There was Nadia, wearing a white bikini, probably bought with my $11,000, clinking a glass of champagne with a guy who definitely wasn't me. The caption read, "Upgrade season. No broke vibes." Nadia wasn't 5 minutes away. She was 3 hours away, laughing at the man who was currently paying for her father's dinner. The observe phase was officially over. I stared at Danny's screen. The video looped. Nadia's head was thrown back, laughing at something the guy in the designer sunglasses said. The sun hit the water behind them, making the whole scene look like a high-budget commercial for betrayal. Upgrade season. The words felt like a physical weight in my chest. I looked at Ray. He was smiling, telling my mom a story about Nadia as a kid, completely oblivious that his daughter was currently lying to his face via text while tagging herself in a no broke vibes post at a resort she couldn't afford on her own. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I just reached out and took Ray's phone from his hand. "Ray," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from a mile away. She's not at the valet. What? She just texted me, Mark. Said she was walking in. I slid Danny's phone in front of him. I hit play. The table went silent. My mother gasped. My father leaned in, his face hardening. Ray picked up the phone, holding it close to his eyes as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. He watched the video once. Twice. He saw his daughter clinking glasses with a stranger. He saw the timestamp. 2 minutes ago. The silence in that private room was louder than any Transformer explosion I've ever heard. Ray's face went from pale to a deep, dangerous purple. He looked at his own phone, the one with the "I'm 5 minutes away" text, and then back at the video of his daughter at a rooftop bar 3 hours away. He didn't say a word. He just stood up and slammed his hand on the mahogany table so hard the wine glasses jumped. "That's enough," Ray growled, his voice shaking with a mix of fury and pure shame. He looked at me, and for the first time in 3 years, he couldn't meet my eyes. "Mark, I am so sorry." "Don't be, Ray," I said, standing up and reaching for my jacket. I felt strangely light. "I've seen enough. Dinner's on me tonight. Enjoy the steaks. I have some locks to change." I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. The act phase had officially begun, and it was going to be surgical. I drove home in total silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of the tires on the pavement. In my line of work, when a storm knocks the grid out, you don't panic. You grab your gear, you head to the site, and you start isolating the faulted segments. Nadia was the fault, and it was time to isolate her. I pulled into our driveway at 9 p.m. The house looked peaceful from the outside, warm porch light, the flower bed she'd bought with my credit card looking lush. It was a lie. I walked inside, and the first thing I did was call a 24-hour locksmith. "I need every lock changed," I told him. "House, garage, even the shed. I want new keys, and I want them tonight." While I waited, I grabbed a stack of heavy-duty contractor bags from the garage. I didn't throw her things. I didn't rip her dresses. I was methodical. I went into the bedroom and started clearing the closet. Every designer bag, every pair of shoes, every no-broke vibes outfit went into a bag. Then, I sat at her vanity. I was looking for her passport. I knew she'd need it for whatever upgrade she was planning, but instead, I found a small leather-bound journal tucked behind her jewelry box. I shouldn't have opened it. But the investigator in me couldn't stop. The first page I landed on was dated 3 weeks ago. It wasn't a diary. It was a script. "Tell Mark the money went to the florist. If he asks about the ATM, say it was Lexi's idea. Use the controlling line. He hates that. It'll make him back off. Lexi says he's just a safety net, not a destination." My hand shook, just for a second. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just a bachelorette party. It was a coordinated, coached dismantling of my character to justify her theft. She wasn't just leaving. She was trying to make sure I felt like I deserved it. The locksmith arrived at 10:30 p.m. As he worked, I dragged all 10 contractor bags onto the front porch. I piled them up like a wall. I took a photo of the bags, the new keys in my hand, and the screenshot of the Grandview video. I didn't send it to her. I sent it to the group chat, the one with her bridesmaids, her cousins, and her brother. "The engagement is off," I wrote. "Nadia is currently at the Grandview Resort with her upgrade. Her things are on the porch. The locks are changed. Please make sure someone picks her up. She's no longer welcome here." Then, I did the one thing that truly cuts the power. I blocked her. On everything. The house felt different with the locks changed. It was quieter, colder, and strangely clinical. I spent the next hour doing what I do best, securing the perimeter. I didn't just block her phone number. I went through our shared accounts like a digital exorcist. Netflix. Logged out of all devices and password changed. Amazon Prime. Address updated. Credit card removed. The Wi-Fi. New SSID. New password. I was systematically erasing the safety net she'd bragged about escaping. Lexi had told her I was a linear man, a utility to be used. Well, a utility can be switched off at the breaker. Around midnight, my doorbell camera started chirping. I didn't even have to look at the feed to know who it was. The notifications were a frantic rhythm of motion alerts. I opened the app and watched the black and white footage. It wasn't Nadia. It was Lexi. She was standing on my porch, looking at the wall of contractor bags with a mix of confusion and disgust. She was wearing a cocktail dress that probably cost more than my first truck, looking wildly out of place in my suburban driveway. Behind her, a white SUV was idling, the headlights cutting through the dark. "Mark!" she shouted, banging on the door. "Open the door. This is psychotic. You can't just throw her stuff out like this. It's her house too." I didn't answer. I didn't even go to the window. I just watched her through the camera lens. She looked around, realizing the neighborhood was dead silent, her boss babe energy evaporating in the face of a locked door and a man who refused to engage. She pulled out her phone, presumably calling Nadia. I could see her pacing, her high heels clicking like a countdown timer on the concrete. Then, another car pulled into the driveway. A familiar, beat-up silver sedan. It was Ray. He didn't even turn off the engine. He stepped out of the car, and even through the grainy night vision of the camera, I could see the slumped shoulders of a man who was utterly defeated by his own blood. He walked up the path, ignored Lexi entirely, and started grabbing the contractor bags. "Ray, what are you doing?" Lexi screeched. "Tell him to open the door. We need to get her jewelry and her." Ray stopped. He turned to Lexi, and though I couldn't hear his exact words, the look on his face made her take 3 steps back toward her SUV. He pointed toward the street, his arms shaking with suppressed rage. Lexi didn't say another word. She got in her car and peeled out, leaving the best friend she'd coached to ruin her life behind the moment things got real. Ray looked up at my doorbell camera. He didn't ask me to open the door. He didn't apologize again. He just gave a single, somber nod, the kind one lineman gives another when a job is dangerous but necessary. He loaded the last of the bags into his trunk and drove away. The observe phase told me Nadia was gone. The assess phase told me she was never coming back. But the act phase wasn't over. I still had $11,000 to find. Saturday morning didn't feel like the start of a weekend. It felt like the morning after a natural disaster. The house was too quiet, and the air smelled like the locksmith's graphite and the lingering scent of Nadia's expensive perfume. I didn't let myself wallow. I made a pot of black coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. In my trade, when a transformer blows, you don't just replace it. You find out why it overloaded. I needed to find my $11,000. I started digging into our shared credit card statements, the ones I usually just paid off without a second glance because I trusted her. Big mistake. The observe phase was now a full-blown forensic audit. Item 1. $1,200 at a high-end lingerie boutique. Date. 3 days before her bachelorette trip. Item 2. $850 at a medical spa for fillers and glow treatments. Item 3. A recurring $400 charge to a lifestyle consultant. I searched the name of the consultant. It wasn't a wedding planner. It was a high-value dating coach Lexi had recommended. Someone who taught women how to pivot from providers to players. The $11,000 cash withdrawals finally made sense. She wasn't just spending money, she was laundering it. She'd been pulling cash to pay for things she didn't want appearing on a digital trail, likely deposits for a new apartment or payments to this coach who was teaching her how to gut me emotionally. Then, I saw the big one. A $2,500 charge to a luxury luggage brand. I pulled up the delivery confirmation. It wasn't sent to our house. It was sent to Lexi's apartment. My phone finally vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. I knew it was her. She'd clearly used Lexi's phone or a burner. "Mark, you're being insane. You can't just kick me out. That's my house. My dad told me what you did at the dinner. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You're a monster. I'm coming over with the police to get my jewelry and the rest of my things. You have 1 hour." I didn't panic. I didn't even get angry. I just felt that cold, professional, energy take over. I picked up the phone and called the local precinct's non-emergency line. I explained the situation, a domestic dispute, a fiancé who had stolen $11,000 from a joint account, and a set of changed locks for my own safety. I told them I'd be happy to have an officer present while she collected her things, provided she brought the receipts for the items she claimed were hers. I have documentation of the theft, I told the dispatcher. I'd like to file a report when they arrive. I sat on the porch, my documentation folder printed out in a neat stack on my lap. I watched the end of the driveway like I was watching a downed power line. 20 minutes later, the white SUV from the night before pulled up. Lexi was driving. Nadia was in the passenger seat, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf, looking like she was trying to hide from a paparazzi swarm that didn't exist. She stepped out of the car, and for the first time, I saw the upgrade in person. She looked expensive. She looked polished. And she looked absolutely terrified when she saw the police cruiser pulling in right behind her. The act was about to get very public. Nadia didn't expect the cops. She expected a broken man she could steamroll with Lexi's high-value scripts. When she saw the officer, a veteran named Miller, step out of the cruiser, her confident stride faltered. She looked at Lexi, who was suddenly very busy looking at her cuticles. "Mark, what is this?" Nadia hissed, stopping 10 feet from the porch. "Police." "Really? You're that desperate for attention?" I didn't get up. I just tapped the folder on my lap. "Standard procedure. Nadia. Since you're here to claim things, I figured we should have an objective witness. Especially since there's a discrepancy in our accounts. About $11,000 worth of discrepancy." Officer Miller walked up, nodding to me. "Ma'am, the homeowner called regarding a domestic property dispute. I'm just here to keep the peace while you gather your essentials." "Essentials?" Lexi chimed in, finally stepping out of the SUV. "She needs her jewelry. The engagement ring alone is worth more than this guy's truck. And her designer bags." "The bags are in the trash bags your dad took last night," I said calmly. "And the jewelry? Well, that's where things get interesting." I stood up and handed a sheet of paper to Officer Miller. "This is a bank statement showing $11,000 in unauthorized cash withdrawals from our joint wedding fund over the last 6 weeks. And these," I handed over another sheet, "are screenshots from Lexi's Instagram showing Nadia at the Grandview Resort, a place she told her father she wasn't at while she was asking him for emergency gas money." Nadia's face went a strange shade of ashen gray. "That money was for wedding expenses." "I told you." "Great," I said, smiling for the first time. "Then you won't mind showing the officer the receipts for the $2,000 florist deposit or the $1,500 photographer fee. Because I called them this morning, Nadia. They haven't seen a dime." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Lexi, but Lexi was backing away toward the car. The boss babe sisterhood was crumbling under the threat of a police report. "The jewelry you mentioned, Lexi?" I continued. "I've itemized everything I bought. Since the wedding is off due to her breach of the engagement, and since I have proof of the financial theft, I'm keeping the engagement ring to recoup the losses. Unless, of course, Nadia wants to hand over the $11,000 right now." Nadia looked like she wanted to scream. "You're a monster. You're trying to ruin me." "No," I said, stepping off the porch. "You ruined yourself. I'm just documenting the debris. Officer, she can have her toothbrush and her remaining clothes. But the safe stays closed until my lawyer reviews the theft charges." Nadia broke. She didn't cry sad tears. She cried angry, frustrated tears of someone who got caught with their hand in the transformer box. She realized the linear man had mapped out every exit. "Fine," she yelled, lunging toward the SUV. "Keep the stupid ring. Keep this boring house. You're just a low-life lineman, Mark. You'll always be covered in dirt and grease. I was meant for more than this." She slammed the door. Lexi peeled out so fast she clipped one of my trash cans. I looked at Officer Miller. He just shook his head. "Worked a lot of these, son. You're lucky you caught the fault before you closed the circuit. But I wasn't done. I had vendors to call, and I was going to get every single deposit back. With Nadia gone, the silence was heavy, but it was honest. I sat down at my desk with a list of every vendor we'd booked. In my job, if a line is dead, you don't just leave it. You dismantle the hardware. I called the venue first, the fairy tale ballroom she'd insisted on. Hi, this is Mark. I need to cancel the reservation for the wedding in 6 months. The woman on the phone hesitated. Oh, Mr. Miller. We already spoke with your fiancée's assistant, Lexi, yesterday. She said the date was being moved and asked about a refund to a new account. My grip tightened on the phone. Assistant? I don't have an assistant. And the account on file is the only one authorized for refunds. Did you send any money? No, sir. We require both signatures for a change of account. She sounded very insistent. Insistent. That was Lexi's specialty. They were trying to divert the deposits, $10, $7.30 of my hard-earned money, into a fresh account before I could even realize the wedding was off. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a heist. I spent the next 4 hours on the phone. The caterer, the DJ, the florist. At every turn, I found Lexi's digital footprints. She'd been calling them, posing as a wedding coordinator, trying to restructure the payments. Listen to me carefully, I told the florist. The engagement is legally dissolved. I have a police report number for financial misconduct. If 1 cent of my deposit goes anywhere but back to my personal checking account, my lawyer will be the next person you talk to. By 4 p.m., I had successfully clawed back $10,730 in deposits. Combined with the $11,000 I'd managed to lock down in the joint account before she could drain the last few hundred, I was almost whole. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Nadia wanted no broke vibes. Well, she was about to find out that high-value lifestyles are hard to maintain when you don't have a linear man footing the bill. But then, my brother Danny called. Mark, check the group chat. Nadia just posted a statement. She's playing the victim, man. And she's using your job against you. I opened the group chat, and my blood pressure spiked. Nadia hadn't just posted a statement. She'd written a manifesto. She'd posted a photo of herself looking teary-eyed and fragile in Lexi's guest room. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. She claimed I had become unstable due to the high-stress nature of my job. She hinted that my time working with high-voltage lines had made me prone to manic outbursts and financial paranoia. I had to flee for my safety, she wrote. He locked me out of my own home and used the police to intimidate me. To all my girls, watch out for the quiet providers. Their silence is just a mask for control. Lexi had commented underneath, so brave, babes. Leaving a toxic environment is the ultimate glow-up. #NoBrokeVibes, #Survivor. I felt like I'd been hit by a falling pole. She was attacking my professional reputation. In my world, if people think you're unstable, you don't get the big contracts. You don't get trusted on the line. She was trying to kill my career to save her image. I was about to type a furious response when the chat bubbled with a new message. It was from Ray. Nadia, delete this, it read. Dad, you don't know the whole story, she fired back instantly. He's brainwashed you because he pays for your dinners. Ray didn't reply in the chat. Instead, he posted a screenshot. It was the text she'd sent him while she was at the resort, the one saying she was 5 minutes away and stuck in a pileup. Underneath it, he posted the video of her at the rooftop bar, arm in arm with the upgrade guy, laughing and clinking glasses. I paid for your college, Nadia, Ray wrote. I taught you to be honest. But I didn't teach you how to be a liar. Mark didn't lock you out. You walked out when you decided his hard-earned money was your personal plaything. Leave this man alone before I post the rest of what I know. The chat went dead. The likes on her post started disappearing. One by one, our mutual friends started leaving the group. Nadia's high-value facade didn't just crack, it shattered. But as I sat there, watching her world collapse, I realized the upgrade guy was still in the picture. And he was about to find out exactly what kind of luxury he'd signed up for. A week passed. I stayed focused on work, pulling double shifts to keep my mind off the wreckage. I was cleaning up the site, as we say. But while I was rebuilding my piece, Nadia was busy discovering that upgrade season has a very high cost of living. Danny, who apparently couldn't look away from the train wreck, called me on a Tuesday night. "Mark, you're not going to believe this. Lexi's Instagram is a war zone." I didn't want to look, but I did. Lexi had posted a series of frantic, angry stories. It turns out, Nadia and her upgrade, a guy named Julian who claimed to be a crypto entrepreneur, had stayed at the Grandview for 3 extra days. They'd been racking up a bill on what they thought was the wedding account's debit card. But remember, I'd already cleared that account and shut it down. When the resort tried to process the final bill, nearly $6,000 for the room, the spa, and the no-broke vibes champagne, the card was declined. The crypto entrepreneur suddenly had temporary liquidity issues, translation. His card was maxed out too. The resort didn't care about their vibe. They cared about their money. According to Lexi's rants, the resort threatened to call the police for theft of services. Nadia had to call Lexi in tears, begging her to put the bill on her credit card. Lexi, wanting to maintain the image of the wealthy lifestyle consultant, did it, but then realized Nadia had no way to pay her back. The sisterhood of the high-value women didn't even last 48 hours under financial pressure. Lexi was now publicly trashing Nadia for being a leech and a fake. "I tried to help her find her worth," Lexi posted to her 10K followers, "but you can't build a palace on a foundation of lies and someone else's empty bank account." So disappointed. The irony was delicious. The woman who coached Nadia to steal from me was now calling her a thief for stealing from her. I sat on my porch, sipping a beer, and realized that for the first time in months, the static in my life was gone. The line was clear. I had my money back, I had my house back, and Nadia was currently sleeping on a couch, surrounded by contractor bags, with a best friend who was actively dragging her name through the mud. But there was one more person I needed to talk to. One more connection to bridge before I could call the job finished. 2 weeks after the Grandview disaster, I met Ray at a small Greasy Spoon diner halfway between our houses. In my world, when a job is finished, you do a final walkthrough with the foreman. Ray was the closest thing to a foreman I had left in that family. He looked older. The stress of his daughter's public meltdown had added new lines to his face. We sat in a booth, 2 men who preferred silence to small talk, and waited for the coffee to arrive. "I have something for you," I said, sliding an envelope across the table. Ray opened it. It was a check for $2,000. "What's this, Mark?" "The emergency gas money she scammed out of you for that trip," I said. "And a little extra for the dinner she missed. I got the deposits back from the vendors. This is yours." Ray pushed the check back. "I didn't raise her to be a thief, Mark. I'm not taking your money to cover her sins." "Take it, Ray. It's not about her. It's about the fact that you stood up for the truth in that group chat when you didn't have to. That's worth more than $2,000 to me." He sighed, his shoulders dropping, and finally tucked the envelope into his flannel shirt pocket. "She's at her aunt's house now. Lexi kicked her out after the resort bill drama. And that guy, Julian." Ray let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Turns out the crypto entrepreneur was just a promoter for the resort. He gets paid to look rich and attract high-value guests. He wasn't the upgrade, Mark. He was the bait. He dumped her the second he realized she didn't actually have a wedding fund to blow." My heart didn't even skip a beat. I just felt a wave of pity. Nadia had traded a real life, a real home, and a real man for a promotional brochure. She'd chased a vibe that was literally a paid performance. "She's been asking about you," Ray said quietly, staring into his coffee. "She thinks if she can just explain things to you, face to face, you'll see it her way. She's still convinced Lexi brainwashed her." "Lexi didn't pull the money out of the ATM, Ray. Nadia did. Lexi didn't type the 5 minutes away text. Nadia did." I stood up and put a $10 bill on the table for the coffee. "The line is dead, Ray. There's no power left to restore. Ray nodded. He understood. In our world, once a wire is cut and the circuit is cleared, you don't go back and try to spark it again. You move on to the next pole. But as I walked to my truck, I saw a familiar white SUV parked at the far end of the lot. Nadia was sitting in the passenger seat, her face pressed against the glass, watching me. I didn't acknowledge her at the diner. I got in my truck, checked my mirrors, and drove home. I followed the speed limit. I didn't look back. But I knew the observe phase wasn't quite over. I could feel the static building again. Sure enough, 2 hours later, a car pulled into my driveway. I was on the porch, working on a frayed piece of climbing gear, when she stepped out. She wasn't wearing the designer scarf or the no-broke vibes sunglasses anymore. She was wearing an old hoodie of mine she must have kept in her bag, the one with the grease stain on the sleeve from when I helped her change a tire 3 years ago. She looked small. She looked humbled. But as a lineman, I know that a wire can look cold and still be carrying enough juice to stop your heart. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling. She stayed at the bottom of the steps, right where the police had stood. "Please. Just 5 minutes. I don't want to fight." "There's nothing to fight about, Nadia. The contracts are cancelled. The house is mine. We're done." "It was Lexi," she sobbed, the tears starting to track down her face. "She got inside my head. She kept telling me I was settling, that I was playing small. She made me feel like if I didn't have this perfect, curated life, I was failing. I got lost, Mark. That wasn't me at the resort. That was a version of me she created." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the calculated tilt of her head, the way she used my old hoodie to trigger my nostalgia. It was a high-value play, just a different script. "Nadia," I said, my voice as flat as a dead battery. "Lexi didn't make you lie to your father. She didn't make you spend $11,000 of the money I earned working 60-foot poles in lightning storms. You chose to upgrade. You chose the rooftop bar. You chose to call me broke and controlling while I was paying for your life. I was scared," she yelled, her vulnerable mask slipping for a second. "I was scared of being a line wife forever. I wanted excitement. Is that such a crime?" "It's not a crime to want a different life," I said, standing up. "But it is a crime to steal the one I was building for us to fund your audition for a better one. You didn't want an upgrade, Nadia. You wanted a free ride. And the ride is over." She looked at the front door, the one with the new, heavy-duty locks. She looked at the house that was no longer her stage. The realization finally hit her. The linear man wasn't a safety net she could fall back into. He was the one who had finally turned off the lights. "I have nothing," she whispered. "Lexi won't talk to me. Julian is gone. My dad won't even let me inside the house." "You have exactly what you built," I said. "I just cleaned up the mess you left behind." I turned around and walked inside. I didn't wait for her to leave. I didn't watch her drive away. I just closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Click. 4 months have passed since the click of that deadbolt. In my line of work, we have a term called restoring the grid. It's the moment after the storm has passed, after the debris is cleared and the lines are restrung, when you finally flip the main breaker and the lights flicker back on. It's a quiet, satisfying hum. That's where I am now. I spent the first few months in a deep maintenance phase. I worked a lot of overtime, not because I needed the money. I actually had more in my savings than ever before now that I wasn't funding glow treatments and lifestyle coaches, but because I found peace in the logic of the wires. High voltage doesn't lie. It doesn't use scripts. It either works, or it doesn't. Nadia is a ghost now. From what I hear through the grapevine, she's working a retail job 2 towns over and living in a cramped studio apartment. Lexi moved on to a new project, probably another poor guy's engagement fund. And Julian, the crypto-baited promoter, is likely still clinking glasses at the Grand View, waiting for the next person to fall for the upgrade season trap. Ray and I still grab coffee once a month. We don't talk about her. We talk about the union, the weather, and the way the world is changing. He's a good man who got stuck with a faulty line, And I think he appreciates that I didn't let the fire she started burn the whole neighborhood down. I recently went back to that steakhouse, not for an engagement dinner, but for a solo meal after a particularly long shift. I sat at the same table. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. The documentation folder on my laptop has been moved to an external drive, tucked away in a drawer. It's a record of a fault, a reminder to always observe, assess, and act. As I was leaving, I saw a couple at the bar. The woman was hiding her phone, and the man was looking at her with that same safety net smile I used to wear. I wanted to warn him. I wanted to tell him to check the joint account. But then I realized, everyone has to learn their own code. I walked out to my truck, the air crisp and clear. My life is stable, my debts are paid, and for the first time in 3 years, the only static I hear is the wind through the trees. Nadia once told me I was linear. She meant it as an insult, a way to call me boring. But standing here now, looking at the solid life I've rebuilt, I realize that being linear is what saved me. While she was running in circles chasing a mirage, I was moving straight ahead. She threw it all away. I just cleaned it up. The grid is back online. And this time, it's built to last.